If you watched my last video, you may recall that I ended that video here and paused on this plant without introducing it. This is Arctostaphylos Austin Griffiths, and it lives here on the front porch in this very large container. And it's not going anywhere. This plant, it's not auditioning, it's not waiting for a spot. This is its home permanently, and that's what this video is about. Some containers are in motion, plants growing on, waiting for their moment. That was the last video. These containers, they're different. They're anchors. In the back garden, I've been playing with shades of blue. It started with the color that I painted my studio doors. That shade of blue just makes me so happy. It's on my cushions, it's on my throw pillows, and I already had started to collect some containers in that shade. So it was natural that my collection would take a turn in that direction. They're not overly matchy-matchy, I don't want that, but they're definitely related. Some of the containers are larger, others are smaller, they're different shapes, but the color is the continuing thread. And you can't see them all at once, but your mind still makes that connection anyway. The largest is centrally located here. It's a pivot point where 3 paths and the shaded seating area intersect, and it holds a Burgundy Jewel vine maple. This container used to be just right around the corner here, nestled in among other plants. Over time, that area got congested. The container was getting buried and the tree was crowding its neighboring canopies. Moving it here changed that. Now you can see it. The tree has room and so does the container. The tall, narrow container down the path holds a cordyline with deep burgundy foliage. It has had phormiums in it before, other strappy plants. I usually put a prima donna in there, and it's a one singular plant, elevated, and a plant that's a strong focal point. So these two together are the anchors. They're visible year-round in every season. When the garden is at full volume in high summer, some containers get obscured, but these two don't. And there's a strong connection with this container here, with its rounded form and its complementary color. This one sometimes late in the season gets overgrown with the plants that are in it, but right now it's showing up really nicely, and the 3 of them together are really speaking to each other. Another spoke of this wheel of connection is here on the table. It's a circular bowl in our color tones on a round table. So round on round. And it's the opposite of a prima donna. It's a rowdy chorus. Euphorbia diamond frost with its frothy white flowers. And we've got a variegated hardy fuchsia with pretty yellow markings. A curly rush spiraling out of the center of the mix. Mookgenia. And a piggyback plant. Texture, color, movement, all at once. And visible on the table in conversation with the other larger containers. Nearby, elsewhere in the grouping, a lower rounded container is holding a Japanese maple. It's small now and in scale with where it is, but I'm keeping my eye on it and I'm watching it. When it bulks up, it'll move into a position where it can be part of the canopy. This other low container that we looked at a little while ago houses a clematis that is tumbling out and actually going up the vine support. And we've got Selaginella that's filling in around it. So its energy is going sideways and downward and it's a counterpoint to the narrow, upright container down the path. In one corner of this seating area is a large container, and it's the area located between the studio and the house. And we looked at this container in my last video, auditioning plants in containers. We've got bold foliage, an open canopy, and then here on the opposite corner, we've got a drama queen. This is a red banana. It's tender. It's not wintering over, no way. It is bold foliage and pure theater, but it's holding that spot while I grow on a replacement elsewhere. The Japanese maple that we just looked at is a strong contender for that position when it gets bigger. The banana, it's just there while we're waiting. And between these two plantings is a nice, lush tapestry of ferns and hardy fuchsias and some other foliage plants, all in containers, creating a nice layered scene. I think of containers as color stories and shape studies, and I move them around until they feel artful and balanced. The full profile being the container and the plant together, the shape of the pot, and then the elevation, what rises out of that container, and how it reads from across the garden. Not every container needs a plant. I often use urns as sculptural elements in the garden. I have an urn in the front garden that has never been planted. I just love its elegant shape and its all-season presence. The color echo between the urn's blue and ivory tones and the cool foliage of the nearby conifers creates a year-round connection. A well-chosen urn can hold its place and contribute to the scene year-round, even unplanted. Containers, they're an investment. Ceramic containers are expensive, and I wouldn't have nearly as many as I do if I hadn't had a retail nursery for a number of years. I had access to wholesale prices, and I took full advantage. I couldn't do that now, so I put them where they'll do the most work, and I'm less precious everywhere else. I have black plastic nursery pots in the sightline on the south side and in the driveway because practicality wins out. My general approach is one plant, one pot. One plant that dominates means that I have one set of needs that I need to tend to. And I'm not overly strict about this. I might have a ground cover underneath or a tapestry of plants to serve as a living mulch, but there is one clear winner when a choice needs to be made about how to tend to that pot in terms of water and care. There's a practical reason beyond aesthetics. Lots of small containers are hard to keep watered in the heat. Fewer, larger containers are just easier to manage. Less fussing, more growing. But that doesn't mean a container has to stand alone. Some of my best garden scenes are groups of single plant containers composed as a unit. I'm still making combinations, I'm just doing it across pots instead of within one. Color, texture, form, all of it, with the added freedom of moving things around until it's right. I usually have a few mixed containers that I'm growing purely for fun and flower power. Annuals, exotic foliage, and plants that I don't try to winter over. These are typically the exception. I've found that it just doesn't take very many flowers at all to have a lot of impact. There are a few reasons a plant ends up in a container as its home rather than a temporary situation. In my garden, one of those reasons is verticillium wilt, a soil-borne disease that Japanese maples are susceptible to. And I love Japanese maples. I have 4 or 5 of them in containers, and they're all doing well. There's one exception. I do have a coral bark maple in my front yard garden that dates back to my original and early garden. But generally speaking, containers are how I satisfy my desire for growing Japanese maples. Redbuds can also be susceptible to soil-borne issues in our area. That's why the Flamethrower cercis from the last video is in a container. I've been growing it that way and enjoying it, so I'm not really in a hurry to move it. It'll likely stay in the container for the long term. Another reason that I grow plants in containers is literally containment. Alstroemeria, I had it in ground and I was loving it. And it was loving my garden, but way too much. Within a season, it was spreading rapidly, and so I pulled it out. It was way too aggressive for me. But it's such a great cut flower, and I love having it. So I transitioned my Alstroemeria to containers. And then there's containment for purely practical reasons. Mint. Culinary mint is wonderful to have on hand. I use it constantly, but planting it in the ground is a disaster waiting to happen. It's aggressive, it spreads, and once it takes hold, it's nearly impossible to eradicate. A container is the only way I'll grow it. It's right here when I need it, completely under control, and it's never going anywhere near my beds. Many of my ceramic containers hold black nursery pots, Anderson pots, rather than planting directly into the ceramic. The ceramic container carries the color story, the design intention, and the Anderson pot is a mechanism. It's swappable, portable, and very practical. Plants in pots are more vulnerable to weather extremes than in-ground plants. The roots are more exposed. There's just less soil for thermal buffering. So don't push your hardiness zones too much in a container unless you've got a plan for winter protection. What's marginal in the ground can be genuinely risky in a pot. I've been asked what I do to protect my containers over the winter. And to be honest, I don't do a lot in terms of winter protection. What I do focus on is acquiring frost-resistant containers from the start. And we don't really get that many hard freezes here. But when we do, what's going to break a beautiful container every time is water. So make sure your containers aren't full of water, overly saturated going into winter, because standing water in them, that expansion of frozen water will crack a container every time, regardless of how frost resistant the label says it is. So choose your containers carefully and manage your moisture going into the cold season. Phormiums and Cordylines can be a bit susceptible to winter damage in our area. So I grow Phormium jester and the Phormium yellow wave in the back garden and the Burgundy Cordyline here. Those are all grown in the black nursery pots. So when the weather changes, an ice storm comes, or we have sustained low temps, I move them into my utility room where I can protect them. And so that's how I've been able to keep these mature specimens looking good in my garden year after year. It's worth mentioning about the black plastic Anderson pots as it relates to winter protection. If you use that pot within a pot method, you're not going to be breaking any ceramic containers due to the pressures of freezing soil. And here we are, back where we started. This is Arctostaphylos Austin Griffiths growing in a very large container. It's not in an Anderson pot, a black plastic pot. It's planted directly into this very large ceramic container, and that's where it's going to live the rest of its life in my garden. It's a forever plant in a forever pot. When it outgrows this container, and it will eventually, I won't be able to rescue it or transplant it. The shock would likely kill it. So this is where the container wins. The container, in this case, is more valuable than the plant. Not to say that I don't love this plant, but in the meantime, I'm just happy to have it here. And the container itself is the permanent commitment to this position at my front entry. When I really lean into this idea of containers as anchors, as design objects, as a framework, I start to see the garden differently. The beds and the containers aren't two separate things. They're part and parcel, one garden, one composition.